Welcome to our debate about EU common foreign and security politics with impact. This time with impact and a call that solidarity in the European Union and in Europe is not a one-way street. And at the moment, sadly, it is. Let me reiterate what happened now in Cyprus has basically blocked the common policy towards Belarus and the sanctions after these fraudulent elections. And this is really a pattern here which we have on the three big cases and issues which we have in Europe, which are really, really important: Kosovo, Ukraine, and Belarus. These are the three really big issues. We see very selective form of solidarity, actually no solidarity from specific countries, which are as well very much the countries which are receiving a lot of subsidies from the European taxpayers. I have here now the SURE program. That's the Corona support program for the employment support that you can get basically. The countries get support for the employment market during the Corona crisis, so that they can subsidize the payment and of the salaries of their countries. This is a very good program. The Germans and Austrians, we have it a lot, and now we promoted it. Then also we decided to subsidize it for all Europeans, not to have mass unemployment like now in the crisis in America, but everybody stays in his job and gets subsidized, or most of the people at least. So that's really good. The EU is now budgeting 87.3 billion of support mechanisms. I have now the main countries. This is from the EU Commission, one table, and you see the five countries which are not recognizing Kosovo, like Greece 2.5 and 2.7, Spain 21.3 billion. Quite a lot. It's not recognizing Kosovo though. Also Cyprus, a small country, 479 gets only under that program. I'm not talking about the recovery fund, just this one specific employment protection program. Also 4 billion for Romania, 600 million, 631 million for the Slovak Republic. All of them five countries have no kind of consideration that the European Union and most of the NATO partners and 100 countries of the world have recognized the Republic of Kosovo, and we did it for a reason. And what is their kind of superior insights in the Kosovo issue, or a novel perspective, which we don't have in the Czech Republic, but they have in the Slovak Republic, which let's say the Bulgarians have not had and the Romanians have. Or the Portuguese decided to do it, but the Spanish not. Or let's say what's the difference? What's the kind of special positioning and understanding, smartness? I cannot understand it. Let's come also to our friends from the Eastern Partnership countries and also from the Balkans. Here for the Corona, the EU has given to a number of countries which are close partners. Ukraine, additionally 1.2 billion. Georgia, 150 million. And so on and so on and so on. And I have here this wonderful table, what Serbia got in the last 20 years since the pro-European revolution of the 5th of October. It is somewhere largest lender to Serbia, more than 4.3 billion worth of loan agreements, and so on. Additionally, 2.9 billion, and EU member states have given 520, and so on and so on, and the EPA funding additionally. So I will anyhow come back to the details. But it's substantial amounts of money which all of these countries have got, and they are not recognizing Kosovo. Many of them are not joining, for example, in the case of Bosnia, Macedonia, and of Serbia, not our Minsk sanctions. Or now Cyprus is leaving the Minister Council and makes a veto towards Belarus. You see, we pay. Solidarity maximum. Sure is just one pillar of that program. I'm not talking about the EU recovery fund, of the normal cohesion funds, of the transfers for the EIB to fund the internet, the transport networks, and so on and so on and so on. And it's all very good, This is what political unions do, We help each other. We want to be together, united in Europe, in the European Union. That's fantastic. That's really the dream of my generation, and it's working. It's so much better than any time ever in history before. But some think that it's somehow money is a right, and political, no, we know exactly what we have to do on Minsk, on Russia, on Ukraine, and on Kosovo. When you call them on that one, then there is a ding, 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 ding on the other side. And this is really, I think, very bizarre. So now let's go for the three issues and let's discuss them a bit in detail. Today is the International Day of Peace, and that's very good, UN Foundation, but unfortunately Kosovo still not a member of the United Nations. Yeah, you know, that's very unfair. And I think we as European Union, most countries have recognized and first of all have liberated Kosovo. It was NATO that liberated. It's 93% of all Europeans are member of NATO. So basically, I cannot understand why we are not really effective on that one. And then I see also, I want to remind, some EU countries really have then voted against Kosovo in UNESCO, in Interpol, or have not voted with them. So much for common security, foreign policy, common decisions. You know, on this day of 75 years of UN and the Day of Peace, we really should be working more united for peace in Ukraine, for peaceful transition in Belarus, and obviously also for peace in the Balkans. Here, the beautiful day, that was the reason for this video and also the perspective I want to share. Actually, you know, to meet the opposition leader just for breakfast, you know, and, you know, all this, you know, support for democratic transition, we don't want to intervene. Look, this is all not working, yeah. Lukashenko will put them in torture chambers, and the Russians will definitely try to do everything to keep it up. So if we, you know, we really have to be effective. It's much better to recognize her, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, as a president-elect, yeah, and also recognize a Belarusian government in exile and in Vilnius, and then build up an exile government, and then somehow build opposition and a real kind of alternative to this basically ex-Soviet terror regime which Lukashenko has developed in the last years, in the last 26 years of his control of this country. And he will not go anyhow peacefully, and it will take a long time. So what we should do is open the Schengen borders, recognize alternative government in Vilnius, and really by time also that one will be won. And I want to congratulate the Lithuanians. They have really already done a lot for freedom in Belarus, and that's really very good. But we have all to be more solidaric, and what the Cypriots have now done is beyond any question a terrible thing, because their own issues with 2 or 3 boats in the Mediterranean with Cyprus, you know, they will definitely not get a lot of solidarity from anybody for that anymore, because, you know, all this support they got in the last years, and now when you do like this, no, no, no. You know, when you think you are the only one that matters and you are endangering our policies on such an important issue like now in Belarus, and you threaten the whole European solidarity, then European solidarity does not exist, and you will receive very little in the future. So now let's come back to the second issue. It's of course the Donbass war, you know, the Minsk sanctions. Huh? You know, we have kept a united line more or less in the European Union despite many opposition. That was very good. And we had several reasons for that. And I just want to put this slide and the memory of this ongoing war up, because we don't do sanctions for nothing. We have a basis. Yeah. Remember, the Russians have basically swallowed Crimea. How you think when a neighboring country swallows your part of your nation? There was no free referendum. This was an annexation with military force, yeah, and it was really a terrible thing. And then even more terrible, in the framework of this war, the Russian separatists, supported with military high-tech equipment from Russia, have shot down a European civil airliner with 300 people dead. I mean, let's not forget what really happened, yeah? So this is actually the responsibility of the country which provides such kind of high-tech weapon to operators who are seemingly not able to handle them, and then they had no intention to kill Dutch and Malaysian people, but they wanted to down Ukrainian airlines, but they were incapable to handle a super weapon, and then there must be consequences, and then were sanctions, and of course the European Union was united with America on that one mostly. But now let's go a little bit to the subsidy receiving countries from the Western Balkans and their position. Some of them, like our NATO fellow members, they have really joined the common security foreign policy. Like Montenegro, very good, very strong ally. Albania, very strong ally. And, then you see Serbia, not an ally at all, yeah? Has been a total different policy on that one. Bosnia, not an ally at all on that one, yeah? And then you come back, Kosovo has made it. Bravo Kosovo again, is a pro-Western country. North Macedonia, we will now see a little bit, yes, exactly, trying to understand Serbia, Bosnia, North Macedonia, Kosovo, and Moldova. And Kosovo has joined this sanctions, and Serbia has backed Russia on this Crimea and other issues, yeah. That's the difference, yeah. And now we have to wonder why, for example, when the EU Commission, the Council, makes a statement that all these countries have joined, they have made an extra one, non-EU states who joined the sanctions, like the NATO allies from the north, and Georgia, and Albania, and Montenegro, and, they didn't mention Kosovo, so I don't think that's very correct, because Kosovo is a recognized European state and it has joined the section, so why not? So coming to North Macedonia. North Macedonia is now a NATO member, and for some reason the last government has not joined the sections, yeah? Maybe that was too controversial, and then everybody said, yeah, you have anyhow the problem with the opposition, and you are so nice, and you shouldn't do that. But it's wrong, We have to ask for allied solidarity. And Macedonia, please join the EU sanctions. Of course, being in the EU sanctions on Crimea and on the whole package called Minsk doesn't mean that you are fully in your heart a solidaric partner of the West. Look what Austria has done since the start of the sanction in 2014 in June, welcoming Putin to a state visit, visiting several times Putin in Sochi and Moscow from our state leadership, and making a lot of noise that the sanctions are not so good and all this pro-Russian policy. So it doesn't mean that you have sadly that that you really believe it, yeah. But at least in the framework of EU solidarity, also the two governments Sebastian Kurz has led has never really left the EU sanctions, yeah. Okay, good, and we have to respect that, yeah. I mean, we have also to remember a little bit, all the other things which are happening in our European-Russian relations. Don't forget they are poisoning opposition leaders, a lot of money laundering, and killing people of the oppositions in Berlin and Vienna in the streets. And then, of course, Hungary, I wanted to note that. Hungary is also one of the countries, a NATO and EU member, but they are also, in the heart, the current leadership is with the Russians, and also in the pocket of the Russians with this nuclear power, with other things. But obviously, they have not left the sanctions. Yeah? They were smart for their own kind of street smartness to somehow stay in the European solidarity of foreign policy, and they have done their own separate deals as they found fit. That's of course not good, but at least, it's not breaking European solidarity on the most important issues, yeah? Anyhow, the Hungarians have been a very special case. I have been very critical already for much they have done, The Hungarians were very mean to the Ukrainians, probably contracted by Russia, and they have on the lower underground level, on a kind of trench warfare, they have made very many problems to the Ukrainians and many issues, and that's really very mean. They have done all these energy deals I've outlined already, so that's of course not the role model, but at least, they have not really voted against, and they did never have a veto against the sanctions. They carried the sanction politics as well, and would have carried now for Belarus as well. So they are at least, not a major obstacle for for that common foreign policy, like the Cypriots have now been. And like they have also recognized Kosovo, and they have also followed the Minsk sanctions, yeah, at least in the letter, maybe not in the spirit, yeah. Good. Now we have to see what is happening in Belarus. Obviously, it's outrageous election fraud. Yeah, we had this kind of appeasement politics with Lukashenko in Austria again, just in 2018, his visit, and just to remind everybody on the Austrian problem. But nevertheless, the European position on Belarus after the elections was very clear. It was outrageous manipulation and fraud. Obviously now is not a recognized president, but we have not really had the standard, the really moral top level answer, like offering work and residence permits to the Belarusians and recognizing this government in exile, the president elect. So we really have to be much better still. And I call on Mr. Borrell. I've sent him this slide many times. He had always, he's a very moral character. He's in many ways a great leader, but he has reminded us that the Americans and the Vatican, he said that at the Munich Security Conference, that the Americans and the Vatican were somehow in complicity with Franco, not friends of freedom, and he will never forget it. And that was obviously in the Cold War. Compromises with dictators always very bad. And I reminded him many times, and he had, anyhow, I have to say, he's growing in the job. He's having this clearer positions towards Russia. The more he learns in responsibility how really the situation is, even maybe he will recognize Kosovo as Spain and behave towards Kosovo much different in the future. That would be very much to be hoped. And obviously, I'm not sure he was already in Ukraine, visited the front lines. So I'm not totally sure about that one. But I think he will now learn in this context. And that's very positive. And he will understand much more that, you have to have a stricter line towards Russia in order not that younger people later in Belarus or in Ukraine or in Georgia and in Kosovo will then one day in next generation be in responsibility, or let's say Mr. Navalny will be once a prime minister in Russia, and he will say, the Europeans were always, the enemies of freedom working with Putin together. And so exactly like Mr. Borrell is now blaming the West for complicity in the Cold War. Kissinger meeting the Spanish dictatorship here in the 70s. Realpolitik is wrong. We have to have moral foreign politics. That's very important. How the Cyprus issues, how it can be solved is very clear. Common joint NATO accession for Cyprus and Kosovo in the partnership of peace first, because they are the only both small countries in Europe. Even Russia is in partnership for peace. They are not in the partnership for peace, and that's really very ununderstandable. I call for recognition of Kosovo by Cyprus, and then like Israel has done it now, and then to really ensure there is joint partnership for peace. I think even Erdogan cannot be against the Turkish Cypriots living in the same defense alliance, and anyhow he cannot be against Kosovo, I think not. So this is the deal to convince him to accede, and then to find a compromise on the gas exploration. But he has already understood that, it's like with the Greeks you remember when they had this big veto in Bucharest in 2008 and derailed the Western integration of Macedonia, Ukraine, and Georgia. And then came the financial crisis, and they were much more modest then. And also the Turkish lira is already losing so much value, and all his kind of grandstanding is just driving away the international global capital. And he will probably be much more modest in the coming weeks in that one. And such a deal and stability for Turkey is much better. And then to peg the Turkish lira to the euro, as I say, since months and months and months, and really have a new beginning with a new partnership with Turkey based on such a proposal. I think that's very good. Visa-free access to Schengen for all Belarusians, Kosovo, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Schengen. I think that should be also attractive for the Turkish to have the Azerbaijani friends in Schengen, and also Kosovo and also the Belarusians. We should not build a wall in order to help Lukashenko to have the Belarusians in a gigantic outdoor jail. So no, we should open the visa borders, and this is something the EU can do very well, and it would be very good. Coming to the Kosovo issue, obviously I called on all these 10 countries already to recognize Kosovo, from Spain to Slovakia, all these subsidized countries. I want to remind that Serbia has made a very vicious campaign of de-recognition and got Burundi and Dominica, Grenada, and Palau, Togo to deregister. And luckily the Americans got now Israel, and Singapore has recognized Bangladesh. So that's all really very good that we have at least 5 new countries here for Kosovo when we lost 15 very small countries with the help of corruption and bribery by the Serbian authorities, which is also well documented. So there is this economic normalization agreement, and again it's the same like with the SURE program. We have here the main transfers. That's now not the Corona transfers, but that's the net contribution in the year 2018. That means 3 million for Greece, 3 million for Romania. Both have not recognized. And also Slovakia, 1.8 billion, not recognized. 15 billion loans and support for Ukraine has not recognized Kosovo. And then we see the Corona funds, the recovery funds, how many billions will be overall for Spain. I see here 70 and 63, quite a lot, actually, interesting. And what we give to Serbia, and additionally the COVID assistance packing. So quite a lot which will be distributed or is regularly distributed, but nobody really cares to listen when we are calling. So I have already called for a White House Peace Summit, including Bosnia. Of course, these 3 countries are very much interconnected, and it's very important to bring them all on the table and make a similar summit with NATO and the EU in Brussels in order to get progress on that side. Bosnia would be another country which would fit very much in moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in an agreement to recognize Kosovo. Because anyhow, if nobody cares for any kind of common policy, why should not Kosovo and Serbia and Bosnia make this move to Jerusalem, and maybe others as well? Because if anyhow everybody does what he wants, then at least they have the recognition and support of Israel and America. And if anyhow our common wishes are irrelevant, it's really the best way for the countries, the 6 countries which want to be in EU and NATO, but are unfortunately blocked for progress in NATO and EU. At least Serbia does not want to be in NATO, to be correct, but the other 5 want. So why not to be united in Jerusalem, have the 6 embassies over there? Mr. Borrell will be angry maybe, but anyhow, there is no authority here, seemingly, and everybody does what he wants, so it's probably the best way for all of this to listen to this move to Jerusalem. And just to be clear, I hope the Israeli authorities will make a European house in Jerusalem and put all the 6 embassies in one floor or in one building, that they can think a bit about their European future together and also work closer together among each other. That would be also very beneficial. Sometimes it has to go via Jerusalem. It would be very good to have a European house for all the 6 embassies together, especially Serbia, Bosnia and Kosovo to be together to understand very much, and also Serbia and Ukraine to be together in one building in order to understand a little bit what their positions are in reality, and also to learn from Israel, a very successful country, a very modern country, and a very good developed country out of very difficult context, and that should be a role model for all of the 6 countries. I have now in this agreement with Serbia and Kosovo in the White House, I saw that this DFC is a very important American bank, development bank. It will have the only office outside America in Belgrade. And I'm just wondering what Belgrade exactly has done to deserve that. And I'm actually not sure they have done anything, They just came to the meeting, they have not recognized Kosovo, they have not met a peace agreement, they have not done any big concession to my knowledge, and they have not moved up to now this trade office to Jerusalem. They made a lot of fuss afterwards and before. And why exactly don't we give it to a NATO capital, this office, like Tirana, Skopje, Podgorica? Would be much better. Anyhow. So I've made a number of videos already that Serbia should join the EU, but also NATO, and adopt the euro, join the World Trade Organization, and be just a normal country like anybody else. And especially when we fund Serbia and we support it so much and tell everybody Serbia is cool, and we say fantastic, and we forgive all the sins from the 4 crimes Serbia has led against its neighbors. And we have for a reason twice to intervene against Serbia in 95 and 99. And really, it was very complicated. Just last week, the Serbs were ready to send the soldiers to Belarus for a military drill. And then they were complaining for crazy pressure by the EU to stop them. Anyhow, but they're buying a lot of weapons from Russia and China. We basically support highway buildings or subsidies, whatever, EU accession massively. And this creates fiscal space. Then Vucic feels rich and uses that to buy weapons from Russia and from China to threaten basically Kosovo, Bosnia, Montenegro, Croatia, our allies. Yeah? And that's a little bit wrong, I think. I can really not see the logic in that one. I have here listed all these numbers from the websites, how much assistance. It was 3.6 billion for Serbia on that one, only grants, and then the loans here invested in lifetime, 6 billion from the EIB, and so on. And Serbian military spending rises 43% in 2019. Good. And then they buy a lot. When you see the bias towards Serbia in EIB is also very big. It's by far the biggest recipient of EIB funding. And then they buy weapons from Russia and China. Okay, that you have seen already. Russian paramilitaries in Ukraine was a big scandal already, and now in Belarus as well. And then they had basically decided that they will not go to this military drill, which was not paramilitaries, but real military. And then they didn't go finally last week. But still, this is not really very cool, I think. So coming to a closing, this kind of anti-solidarity in Europe is a big pattern. It's also with the 3 countries which are not in the Eurozone and rejected, Poland, Czech Republic and Hungary. Hungary, the worst, even mocking at us. And we continue to subsidize really big time, especially Poland, but also Hungary, whenever then they don't join the Eurozone. So I call, we shouldn't connect the subsidies with this rule of law, because that's very complicated to evaluate. Of course, they do a lot of wrong things. There's no doubt about it, and they should be criticized. But it's very difficult to evaluate objectively what is now intervention, which telephone, which charge is good or bad. But not being in the Eurozone and rejecting it, is very easily. That's a legal obligation in the treaties. They should be already long time in. They fulfill the criteria and they're rejected. So then freeze the subsidies for Poland, for the Czech Republic, and for Hungary. And then we will see, because it's much better for the people of these countries to be in the Eurozone, because they will be much richer. So what I say in concluding is, we are a real big union. We are a wonderful instrument of political unification. We are also for solidarity, for welfare, for redistribution. It's all fine, It's necessary in a political union, like in the United States, these mechanisms exist as well. We do that as well. We should do a little bit more, I think, actually. Less on the nation state, more on the European Union. And we should really help the poorer countries in the periphery who have to overcome war and communism. Solidarity is very important, especially for the poorer countries. We should help also in the corona crisis, absolutely. But we should ask from time to time, do you remember that you got now just on a call of a crisis 21 billion euros Spain? Do you remember that you got almost 480 million Cyprus? Can you then not cry? Because we anyhow will help you and defend you for sure from the Turks, yeah? If they attack you. Don't worry, they are our allies. They will not hurt you, yeah? And, there will be a just peace in the East Med. Don't worry. But, don't make this kind of contra-arguments against something which we really kindly ask you. Or at least don't expect to receive all this solidarity. We have to connect foreign policy positions with these redistribution mechanisms. And we say to Spain, yeah, there is no objective reason not to recognize Kosovo. So please do that, and the show goes on. The 21 billion euros are rolling, but on the same for Cyprus. And it's the same for Ukraine, it's the same for Kosovo, it's the same for Belarus. Yeah? And also everybody who wants to join us. Yeah? If we as EU 27 make a reasonable decision, and then just one country with a very specific request, tell us what you want, yeah? But don't condition it with something totally unrelated, yeah? Because, we cannot do that for Turkey exactly like that, and it's not justified, yeah? And, when the Serbs think that they can do all their things and then join somebody else, yeah? Join somebody else, yeah? But not with the 10 billions we gave you. And here, I think it's clearer, it's necessary to speak very clear that everybody understands, also Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia. We massively support you, but you don't support us on Kosovo. What kind of solidarity is this? I mean, is it a union of solidarity, of common values, of common purpose? Is the Cyprus so smart to decide on the Kosovo policy, on the Belarus policy? Have we not supported you at every moment, Cyprus? Yeah? Yes, we have. Yeah? And just we cannot really start a war with Turkey because of you. And then you run out of these meetings? I mean, this is really wrong. Yeah? So, anyhow, I call on the European authorities, remind everybody where the money comes from and what exactly the solidarity is in Europe. And then I call on all the countries from Spain to Ukraine, yeah, to fall in line with common foreign security policy, because that's the moral policy to make. Yeah? That's the decent decisions. We don't make this for nothing. When Germany, France and all the countries around have made a decision after very complicated and painful analysis. Yeah? They're not going to make gigantic steps. Yeah? Step by step on the basis of values, carefully evaluated. It's a big process of a big union to find common positions. Yeah? And then please don't derail it. Yeah? Because it's very important. Okay, thanks a lot.